The air in Le Bernardin always smelled of quiet money. It wasn't just the scent of saffron, truffle oil, or the faint, briny crispness of fresh oysters, it was the aroma of absolute, unshakable stability. I stood near the hostess stand, adjusting the cuffs of my bespoke jacket, feeling that familiar sense of pride. I belonged here. I had earned my place at these tables, amidst the soft clinking of crystal and the hushed conversations that moved markets and shifted political landscapes. Today, however, was not about business. It was Tuesday. Our third anniversary. Or rather, the third anniversary of the day we met, a date Vanessa insisted we observe with the same reverence as our actual wedding day. She loved these small, manufactured milestones. She claimed they kept the romance alive, stitching the years together with little knots of celebration, but I suspected she simply enjoyed the gifts that accompanied them. I had arrived early. 20 minutes early, to be precise. My plan was simple, classic, and undeniably romantic. Approach the table where she was having lunch with her inner circle, 3 women who treated gossip like a competitive sport and marriage like a strategic merger, pay the bill quietly, and then surprise her with the vintage sapphire earrings I had spent 3 months tracking down in an auction house in London. They were Art Deco, platinum, elegant and sharp, just like her. It was a gesture designed to be perfect. Vanessa loved perfection. She curated her life like a museum exhibit, and I was happy to be the curator who funded the acquisitions. Mr. Collier, the hostess whispered, recognizing me immediately. Her smile was professional, tight at the corners, trained to show deference without servility. Mrs. Collier is seated in the private alcove near the garden window. It's quite secluded today. Shall I announce you? No, I said, raising a hand gently. I want to surprise her. I'll just wait by the partition for a moment until there's a lull in their conversation. I don't want to interrupt anything important. The hostess nodded and retreated into the shadows of the dining room. I moved silently across the plush carpet, positioning myself behind the decorative wooden screen that separated the main dining area from the semi-private booths. The lattice work was intricate, dark mahogany covered in climbing ivy, offering me a fragmented, kaleidoscope view of the table. I could see the back of Vanessa's head. Her hair was styled in that effortless, sun-kissed wave that cost $400 and 3 hours of time at a salon on Madison Avenue. She was wearing the cream silk blouse I had bought her in Milan last spring. She looked radiant, a picture of grace and contentment. I was about to step out, a smile already forming on my face, visualizing the delight in her eyes, when I heard my name. Ethan is manageable, Vanessa said. Her voice was different. It lacked the melodic, breathy quality she used when we were alone, the tone that suggested intimacy and vulnerability. This voice was lower, flatter, stripped of all affectation. It was the voice of someone discussing a tedious spreadsheet or a malfunctioning appliance. He's boring, yes. God, he can drone on about supply chains for hours. But he's predictable. Stability has its price, girls. I froze. The velvet box in my pocket suddenly felt heavy, like a stone dragging down my suit jacket. My hand, which had been reaching for the edge of the screen, stopped in midair. But 3 more years, Van? That was Jessica, her best friend, a woman who had hugged me at our wedding and toasted to our eternal happiness. Can you really do 3 more years of charity galas and listening to him talk about logistics and shipping routes? I mean, the man is a walking sedative. There was a collective laugh. It was a sharp, brittle sound that seemed to scratch against the expensive wallpaper, peeling away the veneer of sophistication in the room. I don't have a choice, Vanessa replied, taking a sip of wine. I could hear the glass settle back onto the tablecloth with a decisive clink. Look, the prenup is ironclad on the basics. I've had 3 different lawyers look at it. If I leave now, I get a capped settlement. It's barely enough to buy a condo in Brooklyn, let alone maintain my lifestyle. Ethan's lawyers were thorough. Too thorough. They locked down everything premarital. My heart hammered against my ribs, a slow, heavy thudding that echoed in my ears, drowning out the ambient jazz. I should have walked away. I should have stormed in and thrown the earrings on the table. Instead, I stood paralyzed, transformed into a statue of a husband, witnessing the autopsy of my own marriage while the patient was still alive. So, what's the strategy? Another voice asked, likely Sarah, the divorcee of the group. The strategy is biology, Vanessa said calmly. The coldness of her tone sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the restaurant's air conditioning. It was calculating, surgical. I go off the pill next month. He's been begging for a child for a year. I give him 1. Maybe 2, if I need to buy more time. A child changes the legal landscape completely. Custody, child support, the marital home, the prenup bends when there's a welfare of the child argument involved. I've consulted with a specialist. Once there's a baby, the judges look at lifestyle consistency. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, hidden in my pockets, clenched into fists so tight my knuckles ached. She wasn't talking about a family. She wasn't talking about the product of our love. She was talking about a leverage acquisition. She was discussing our future child as if it were a hostile takeover asset, a pawn to be placed on the board to checkmate my legal protections. "You're evil," Jessica laughed, but there was admiration in it, a toxic sort of respect. "Genius, but evil." "I'm practical," Vanessa corrected, her voice smooth as silk. "I want the life I deserve. I deserve the house in Greenwich, the summers in the Hamptons, the freedom. Ethan is just the bridge to get there. Once the baby is 2 or 3, I'll file irreconcilable differences. I'll be the devoted mother who just couldn't make it work with the workaholic absentee father. I'll take the house, a fat chunk of the liquid assets for the child's trust, which I will control, and I'll be free. Young, rich, and free." "And what about Ethan?" "He'll recover," she dismissed me, with a casual wave of her hand. "He has his ships. He has his containers. He loves them more than me anyway. Honestly, I'm doing him a favor. I'm giving him an heir before I take half his kingdom. It's a transaction." The conversation shifted to Pilates instructors and summer rentals, but I was no longer listening. The world had tilted on its axis. The warmth of the restaurant, the smell of food, the murmur of patrons, it all felt distant, distorted, like I was watching a movie through a thick pane of dirty glass. The woman sitting there wasn't my wife. It was a stranger wearing her face, a parasite that had been feeding on my affection for 3 years. I didn't step out. I didn't confront her. Screaming would have been messy. It would have been emotional. And right then, standing in the shadows of the ivy-covered lattice, my emotions were rapidly cauterizing, burning away under the heat of pure betrayal to leave something hard, cold, and incredibly sharp in their place. I turned around. I walked back to the hostess stand. My movements were mechanical, precise, governed by a new operating system. "Mr. Collier," the hostess looked confused, her brow furrowing. "Leaving so soon? Is everything all right?" "Something came up," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, detached, almost robotic. "Business. Urgent business. Do not tell my wife I was here. I don't want to ruin her lunch. Please, erase the reservation from the log if you can." "Of course, sir. Discretion is our priority." I walked out into the blinding afternoon sun of Manhattan. The noise of the city hit me, sirens, horns, the rumble of construction, the aggressive chaotic energy of Midtown, but inside my head, there was only silence. A terrifying, absolute silence where love used to be. I didn't go home. I couldn't go home. If I saw her now, I wouldn't be able to maintain the mask. I would crumble or I would explode, and neither option served my interests. I needed to calibrate. I needed to assess the damage. I got into my car, a black sedan that smelled of leather and isolation, and told the driver to take me to the office. "The office, sir? It's 3 o'clock. You said you were done for the day." "Just drive, Michael. And take the long way. Go around the park." My company, Collier Logistics, occupied the top 3 floors of a glass needle in the financial district. It was my empire. I had built it from a single warehouse in New Jersey to a global network. I dealt with storms, with pirates in the Malacca Strait, with trade wars and union strikes. I knew how to handle threats. I knew how to navigate treacherous waters. I just had never expected the threat to be sleeping in my bed, whispering "I love you" while calculating my net worth. I locked the door to my office. It was a fortress of solitude high above the city. I didn't turn on the main lights, just the banker's lamp on my desk. The pool of yellow light illuminated the mahogany surface, a battlefield I knew how to command. I sat down and opened the safe built into the credenza behind my desk. Inside, among the property deeds, stock certificates, and emergency cash, was a thick blue folder. The prenuptial agreement. I hadn't looked at it in 5 years. I remembered signing it in a haze of optimism, annoyed by my lawyer's cynicism. "She loves me for me," I had told them, feeling noble and protective. "This is just a formality to appease the board." How they must have laughed in private. How naive I had been. I began to read. I read with the scrutiny of a forensic accountant, stripping away the legalese to find the raw mechanics of the contract. Vanessa was right. Clause 7. 1 regarding alimony was generous but capped, a fixed amount for every year of marriage. Clause 8. 3 regarding real estate was solid, what was mine before the marriage remained mine. But then I reached the sections on custody and modification of terms in the event of offspring. She had done her homework. If we had a child, the change of circumstances doctrine would allow a judge to tear this document apart to ensure the child's lifestyle matched the father's. She could claim the house in Greenwich as the primary residence of the minor. She could claim 40% of my future earnings as support. She could bleed me dry for 18 years, dragging me through family court until I was nothing but a checkbook. And I would be powerless to stop it because the law protects the mother, and she knew exactly how to play the role of the victim. I closed the folder. I felt a nausea rising in my throat, not from fear, but from the sheer violation of it. She was going to use a child, my child, a life we would create together, as a key to a safe deposit box. It was a level of sociopathy I hadn't thought her capable of. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city sprawled below me, a grid of lights beginning to flicker on as twilight approached. The Hudson River was a dark ribbon cutting through the concrete. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. I could divorce her now. That was the logical move. Preemptive strike. Serve her papers tomorrow. But she would fight. She would claim she wanted the marriage to work. She would drag it out in the press. And even without a child, she would get a settlement. She would get enough to walk away laughing at the fool she had played. She would win. No. That wasn't enough. I didn't just want to win, I wanted to correct the balance sheet. I wanted a total return on this investment of deception. I wanted her to feel the loss as acutely as I felt the betrayal. I went back to the document. I turned the pages, searching for a weakness. A crack in the armor. And then, I found it. Page 42. Clause 4. 2. The infidelity clause. In the event that either party engages in extramarital sexual relations or verified romantic entanglement with a third party, and such engagement is proven by clear and convincing evidence, the offending party shall forfeit all rights to spousal support, alimony, and any claim to marital assets accrued during the union. The offending party shall leave the marriage with only those assets they brought into it. Verified romantic entanglement. The wording was specific. It didn't just mean sex. It meant a relationship. It meant a breach of the emotional contract. My lawyers had inserted that phrase to protect against emotional affairs that drained marital resources. I sat back in my leather chair. This was the kill switch. If Vanessa cheated, she got nothing. Zero. She would be back on the street with her looks and her expensive tastes, and no means to support them. But Vanessa was disciplined. She treated her role as a wife like a job at a Fortune 500 company. She wouldn't cheat. Not with a random stranger. Not with a trainer. It was too risky. She was risk-averse. Unless the risk seemed negligible compared to the reward. Unless the temptation was so specifically tailored to her desires that she couldn't recognize it as a trap. Unless she thought she had found something better than me, someone who offered not just money, but the soulful connection she constantly complained I lacked. I swiveled my chair away from the window. The sorrow was gone now. The heartbreak had been processed, filed away, and shredded. What remained was the cold clarity of a man who needed to solve a logistical problem. My wife plans to destroy me financially and emotionally using a child as a weapon. Constraint, I cannot initiate the destruction without losing assets or dignity. Solution, she must destroy herself. She must pull the trigger on her own demise. I needed a catalyst. I didn't need a gigolo. A gigolo is a body for hire, a blunt instrument. Vanessa would see through a gigolo in 5 minutes. She was an intellectual snob. She liked art, she liked tormented souls, she liked the idea of being a muse. She wanted a man who was dangerous enough to be exciting but broken enough to need her fixing. I needed an actor. I didn't open Google. I didn't call a casting agency. Those trails were paper-thin and easily traced. Instead, I opened a different file on my secure server. The one related to my private investments in distressed debt. I bought debt sometimes, commercial loans, personal liabilities, student loans, from banks that wanted to clean their books. It was a way to acquire leverage over properties or businesses I might want later. It was a cold, mathematical world where human lives were reduced to credit scores and delinquency rates. I searched the database for a specific profile. Male. Age 25 to 35. Creative profession. Massive, crushing debt. Someone desperate. Someone with nothing to lose. It took me 3 hours. The city was dark now, the office silent except for the hum of the server. But I found him. Julian Ross. Age, 32. Profession, actor, SAG status, inactive. Status, unemployed. Financial status, catastrophic. He had defaulted on student loans from a prestigious drama school, Yale School of Drama, no less. Talent wasted. He had maxed out 6 credit cards. But the interesting part was a private loan, $50,000 owed to a loan shark operation in Queens, a debt that had recently been sold to a collection agency I indirectly owned through a shell company. I pulled up his photo. He was handsome, but not in a polished, commercial way. He had dark, messy hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too much. He looked like a poet who had lost his notebook in a gutter. He had a jawline that suggested strength, but a gaze that screamed vulnerability. He was perfect. He was exactly the type of fixer-upper Project Vanessa couldn't resist. I picked up the phone. Not my office line. A burner phone I kept for sensitive negotiations with overseas dock unions where the laws were merely suggestions. I dialed the number of my private security consultant, a man named Mr. Graves who used to work for intelligence and now solve problems for people who couldn't call the police. "Graves," I said when he answered. His voice was gravel, stripped of sleep. "Mr. Collier. It's late. I need you to locate someone. Julian Ross. Last known address is a basement apartment in the East Village. He owes money to the wrong people. Don't hurt him. Just bring him to the warehouse on Pier 42. Tonight. Tell him his debt has been called in." "Is there a problem, Mr. Collier?" "No," I said, staring at the framed photo of my wife on my desk. She was smiling, that same radiant, practiced smile I had seen in the restaurant. It mocked me now. "We are just starting a new project. Project Narcissus." The warehouse was cold. The wind off the Hudson River rattled the corrugated metal walls, creating a hollow, ghostly rhythm. It was empty, save for a single table and 2 chairs placed in the center of the vast concrete floor, illuminated by a single hanging bulb. It looked like an interrogation room, which, in a way, it was. Julian Ross looked terrified. He was shivering, though I couldn't tell if it was from the cold or the fear. He was wearing a leather jacket that had seen better days, the elbows worn smooth, and jeans that were torn not for fashion, but from wear. He sat on the metal chair, his hands shaking slightly on his lap. He thought he was there because of the money. He thought I was going to break his legs. I walked out of the shadows, the sound of my dress shoes echoing sharply on the concrete. I was wearing my bespoke charcoal suit, a stark contrast to the grime of the warehouse. I was the predator here, he was the prey. I placed a sleek leather briefcase on the table and sat down opposite him. "Julian Ross," I said softly. He flinched. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a weapon. "Look, man, I don't have the money. I need more time. The audition last week, it went well, I swear, I just need a few more days. I don't want your money, Julian." He stopped, blinking. "What?" "I own your debt," I explained, sliding a piece of paper across the table. It was a copy of his promissory note, stamped with the seal of my collection agency. "I bought it this morning. You owe $52,000, plus interest. You are drowning, Julian. You are waiting tables at a dive bar on Avenue B, you are sleeping on a friend's couch because you got evicted, and your acting career is dead in the water. You are a ghost in this city." He stared at the paper, then at me. "Who are you?" "I am a producer," I lied. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. I was producing the most expensive drama of my life. And I am casting for a role. A very specific role. It pays off your entire debt. Plus $100,000 in cash upon completion. His eyes widened. The fear was replaced by a flicker of hunger, the desperate hope of a drowning man seeing a raft. "What kind of role? Is this porn? Or something illegal? Because I don't do drugs, and I don't." "No," I cut him off with a look of disgust. "It is a performance. Immersive theater. Method acting. The audience is one person. The stage is the city of New York. The duration is approximately 3 months." "I don't understand." I opened the briefcase. Inside was not money, but a dossier. Thick, detailed, meticulously compiled over the last 6 hours by Graves' team. "This," I said, tapping the folder, "is the script? But there are no lines to memorize. Only a character. You will play a man named Elias Thorne. Elias is an architect. He is successful, but disillusioned with the corporate world. He loves abstract expressionism, hates roses but loves lilies, reads Camus, and drinks Pinot Noir. He is looking for a muse." Julian reached for the folder, his curiosity piquing. He touched the paper as if it were a holy text. "Elias Thorne. Okay. And who is the audience?" I pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of Vanessa, taken at a gala last year. She looked ethereal in a silver gown, laughing at something someone off camera had said. "Her name is Vanessa," I said. "She is a woman who feels trapped in a golden cage. She is looking for someone who understands her soul. Someone dangerous but sensitive. Someone exactly like Elias Thorne." Julian looked at the photo, then up at me. A slow realization dawned on his face. The actor in him was waking up, analyzing the subtext, reading the room. "She's your wife," he stated. It wasn't a question. "She is the target," I corrected. "Your job is to meet her. To intrigue her. To become her confidant. And eventually, to make her fall in love with you. You want me to seduce your wife? He let out a nervous, incredulous laugh. Man, this is twisted. Why? You want a divorce? Why not just leave her? I want a breach of contract, I said coldly. And for that, I need proof. But listen to me very carefully, Julian. This is the most important part of your contract. This is the clause that keeps you alive. I leaned forward, invading his personal space. I let the silence stretch until he looked uncomfortable. You will not touch her. You will not sleep with her. Not until I give the signal. If you touch her prematurely, the deal is void, and I will bury you under so much legal and financial ruin that you will wish you were in prison. Do you understand? It has to be emotional. It has to be a connection of the mind. I want her to be obsessed with you. I want her to be willing to throw her life away for you. And when she is at that point, then, and only then, do we move to the physical phase. Julian swallowed hard. He looked at the photo of Vanessa again. And if I say no? Then you leave this warehouse, and my associates will begin the standard debt collection procedures. Which, I believe, involve seizing your assets, garnishing your wages for the next 40 years, and ensuring you never work in this town again. You will be a waiter until you die, Julian. He ran a hand through his messy hair. He was cornered. But I saw something else in his eyes too. The challenge. The vanity of an actor who is offered a lead role after years of rejection. The chance to play the hero, the lover, the mystery. 100,000, he asked quietly. And a clean slate. You walk away free. He took a deep breath, looking around the empty warehouse as if saying goodbye to his old life. Tell me about Elias Thorne. I smiled. It was a thin, joyless smile. Elias is an architect who dreams of building a cathedral of glass. He thinks modern cities are soulless. I began to recite the personality I had constructed, based on every complaint Vanessa had ever made about me. I was building her perfect man out of thin air, debt, and lies. After an hour of briefing, Julian was sitting straighter. His shoulders had relaxed. His voice had dropped an octave. He was already getting into character, shedding the skin of the failed actor and putting on the armor of the misunderstood genius. One more thing, I said, taking out my phone. We need a screen test. Now? Yes. I'm going to call her. I'm going to put it on speaker. I want you to listen to her voice. And I want you to react. I want to see if you can look at a phone with the adoration I need her to see in your eyes. I need to know you can sell this. I dialed Vanessa's number. It was late, almost midnight. She would be in bed, probably reading on her iPad, wearing the silk eye mask she thought prevented wrinkles. Hello? Her voice was sleepy, soft. The fake voice. The wife voice. Ethan? Where are you? I was worried. I'm sorry, darling, I said, my voice dripping with manufactured apology. I'm still at the office. Crisis with the Singapore shipment. I'll be sleeping here tonight on the couch. I didn't want to wake you coming in late. Oh, poor baby, she cooed. Don't work too hard. I miss you. I miss you too, I said, staring directly at Julian. Julian was watching the phone. He wasn't looking at it like an object. He was looking at it like it was a lifeline. He tilted his head slightly, a soft, wistful smile playing on his lips. He reached out a hand, hovering it over the device, fingers trembling slightly, as if he wanted to caress the voice but couldn't. His eyes filled with a sudden, manufactured longing that was so convincing it almost made me sick. It was a look of pure, unadulterated devotion. It was perfect. He looked like a man hopelessly in love with a woman he couldn't have. I love you, Ethan, Vanessa said. Sleep well, I replied. I hung up. The silence rushed back into the warehouse. Julian dropped the expression instantly, reverting to the tired, desperate man in the leather jacket. It was jarring, like watching a light switch flip. He looked at me for approval. Well, he asked. I stood up and closed the briefcase. You're hired, I said. But remember one thing, Julian. If you actually fall for her, if you start to believe your own lies, I will know. And I will destroy you. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving him alone in the cold, empty space with the dossier of the woman he was about to destroy. The game had begun, and I had just cast the perfect lead. The art of surveillance is not about watching, it is about waiting. It is about the ability to suspend your own existence and inhabit the empty spaces of someone else's life until they make a mistake. For the past 2 weeks, I had ceased to be Ethan Collier, the husband, and had fully embraced my role as the architect of a reality that existed solely to entrap my wife. I had set up my command center in the secondary study of our Greenwich home, a room Vanessa rarely entered because she found the smell of old leather and pipe tobacco depressing. It was a masculine space, lined with books I had actually read and trophies from sailing regattas I had actually won, relics of a life that felt increasingly like a costume I wore for public appearances. Now, however, the room served a darker purpose. On the mahogany desk sat a laptop connected to a secure server. Through it, I had access to the GPS tracker I had installed on Julian's rental car, a vintage Porsche 911 that I had selected because it signaled taste without trying too hard. I also had the audio feed from the bug in his lapel pin, a small piece of onyx that looked decorative but was actually a high-fidelity microphone. Vanessa was currently at the Void Gallery in Chelsea. It was the opening night of an exhibition by a Japanese artist who specialized in sculptures made of compressed industrial waste. Vanessa hated industrial waste, but she loved the social capital that came with pretending to understand it. I adjusted my headset. The audio feed crackled, then settled into the ambient hum of a crowded room. I could hear the clinking of wine glasses, the murmur of polite, vacuous conversation, and the sharp click of heels on concrete floors. "Status," I said into the microphone. "I'm in," Julian's voice came back, low and clear. He was nervous. I could hear it in the slight tremor of his breath. "The place is packed. I feel underdressed." "You are perfectly dressed," I corrected him, staring at the GPS dot on my screen. "The linen suit suggests you just flew in from a site visit in Tuscany. Everyone else there is wearing black because they are trying to disappear. You are wearing cream because you have nothing to hide. Remember the backstory, Julian. You are Elias Thorne. You build sanctuaries, not buildings." "Right. Sanctuaries. I see her." My pulse spiked. "Describe her." "She is standing by the large metal cube in the center. Black dress, backless. Holding a glass of champagne but not drinking it. She looks bored." "She is not bored. She is scouting," I said. "She is looking for someone to talk to who isn't trying to sell her insurance or get an invitation to our summer gala. This is your window. Approach her from the left. Do not make eye contact immediately. Look at the sculpture." I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene. I knew that gallery. I knew the lighting would be harsh, unflattering to anyone over 30, but Vanessa would find the one shadow where she looked mysterious. "Okay, I'm next to her," Julian whispered. "Wait 5 seconds," I commanded. "Let the silence become awkward. She hates awkwardness. She will speak first." 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like a car crash frozen in time. Vanessa's voice came through the feed. It was her gallery voice, slightly lower than usual, tinged with a weary sophistication. "It is not a crash," Julian said. He delivered the line exactly as we had rehearsed, with a touch of gentle correction. "It is a reconstruction. The artist is trying to find order in chaos. But he failed." "He failed?" Vanessa asked, surprised. She wasn't used to people criticizing the art at these events. It was against the unwritten rules. "Look at the welding," Julian continued, channeling the architectural knowledge I had drilled into him for 3 nights straight. "It is aggressive." He forced the metal together. True structure comes from balance, not force. A building, or a sculpture, should feel like it grew from the ground, not like it was dropped there. There was a pause. I held my breath. "I'm Vanessa," she said. "Elias," Julian replied. "Elias Thorne." "Are you an artist, Elias?" "I am an architect. But mostly, I am just a man looking for a decent glass of wine in a room full of vinegar." Vanessa laughed. It was a genuine laugh, not the brittle social titter she used with her friends. "I am afraid you won't find it here. The champagne is lukewarm." "Then perhaps we should find a better venue," Julian said. "I know a place around the corner. Quiet. Dark. They serve a Pinot Noir that tastes like rain on slate." "Rain on slate?" Vanessa repeated, amused. "That is a very specific description. I have a very specific palate." I shouldn't," she hesitated. "My husband might drop by." "Is he here?" "No. He is working. He is always working." "Then he is a fool," Julian said softly. "To leave a work of art unattended in a room full of critics." I flinched. That line was cheesy. It was bordering on soap opera. I hadn't written that. Julian was improvising. I was about to bark a reprimand into his earpiece when I heard Vanessa's intake of breath. "Lead the way, Elias," she said. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The hook was in. For the next 3 weeks, my life became a bizarre duality. By day, I was Ethan Collier, the distant, preoccupied husband who left for the office at dawn and returned late, smelling of stress and fatigue. By night, I was the director of my own marital demise. I watched them. I listened to them. I curated their romance with the precision of a diamond cutter. When Vanessa mentioned she loved the poetry of Rilke, I had Julian leave a vintage copy of Letters to a Young Poet on the table at the cafe where they met, with a specific passage underlined. When she complained that I never noticed her new hairstyles, I instructed Julian to compliment the way the light caught the amber tones in her hair. It was masochistic. Listening to my wife open up to another man, a man I was paying, was a torture I hadn't anticipated. She told him things she had never told me. She told him about her fear of aging. She told him about her childhood dream of being a painter, a dream she had abandoned because it didn't pay the bills. She painted a picture of herself as a tragic victim of circumstance, a bird in a gilded cage, and I was the cruel jailer who fed her diamonds but starved her soul. He doesn't see me, she told Julian one rainy Tuesday afternoon. They were sitting in his car, parked by the river. I was listening from my office, staring at a spreadsheet I couldn't focus on. Ethan looks at me and sees an asset. A wife. A hostess. He doesn't see this. I see you, Julian said. His voice was warm, thick with manufactured empathy. I see a woman who is burning brightly in a room with no oxygen. God, Elias, she whispered. Where have you been all my life? Building castles in the air, he replied. Waiting for someone to move in. I slammed my hand down on the desk. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Vanessa didn't want a soulmate, she wanted a mirror that reflected a flattering version of herself. Julian was that mirror. I was just the one holding the glass. But as the days went on, the game shifted. Julian was good. Too good. He was starting to enjoy the role. I could hear it in the way he laughed with her, in the easy confidence of his lies. He wasn't just reciting lines anymore, he was inhabiting the character of Elias Thorne so fully that I sometimes forgot he was a desperate actor with $50,000 of debt hanging over his head. And Vanessa? She was glowing. She was more affectionate with me at home, which was the cruelest twist of all. Her guilt made her sweeter. She bought me ties. She asked about my day, her eyes shining with a secret light that had nothing to do with me. She was high on the affair, drunk on the thrill of deception. I had to remind myself of the end game. I had to look at the prenup in my safe every night to keep my resolve from crumbling into jealous rage. Then came the test. It was a Thursday. I was in a meeting with the board of directors when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian. Code red. I excused myself, stepping into the hallway. I dialed his number, bypassing the earpiece for a direct line. He didn't answer. I switched to the audio feed. I don't understand, Julian was saying. Vanessa, just tell me where we are going. No, Vanessa's voice was playful but edged with suspicion. You said you knew this city better than anyone. You said you felt a connection to the places that hold memory. I do, Julian said. I could hear the engine of the Porsche humming. They were moving. Then drive, she commanded. Take me to the place where silence is loudest. Take me to the hidden garden. The hidden garden? Julian repeated. He sounded panicked. Vanessa, that sounds like a metaphor. It's not a metaphor, silly. It's a test. You said you felt like we had known each other in a past life. If that's true, you should know where I go when I want to disappear. I've described it to you 100 times without naming it. The old stone arch. The smell of wild mint. The noise of the city fading away. I froze. I knew exactly where she meant. It wasn't a public park. It was a tiny, forgotten patch of green behind an abandoned church in the West Village. It was overgrown, technically trespassing, and completely invisible from the street. It was where I had proposed to her. She was testing him. She was subconsciously trying to overlay her new lover onto the most sacred memory of our relationship. She wanted him to replace me completely, even in the geography of our history. I need a moment to think, Julian stammered. The traffic is distracting me. Don't think, she said, her voice cooling. Feel. If you don't know, Elias, just say so. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe you're just like everyone else. This was it. The fracture point. If he failed this, the illusion would break. She would see him as a fraud. She would go back to being the cautious, calculating wife, and my chance to trigger the infidelity clause would vanish. I had to intervene. I typed the coordinates into the secure messaging app that flashed on the dashboard screen of the Porsche, a feature I had installed for emergency navigation. St. Luke's in the Fields. Enter through the service alley on Hudson. Turn left at the broken gargoyle. I watched the GPS dot. Julian paused. He must have seen the message. Ah, Julian said, his voice changing instantly from panic to a low, knowing purr. You mean the sanctuary behind St. Luke's? The one with the wild mint? Yes. Vanessa gasped. You know it? I go there to think, Julian lied, smooth as silk. It is the only place in the city where God still listens. Take me there, she whispered. Please. I leaned against the cold wall of the office corridor, closing my eyes. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp, twisting ache. That garden was ours. It was the one pure thing we had. And now, I was giving the map to the man I had hired to destroy us. I was selling the coordinates of my own heart to ensure the bankruptcy of hers. Sir? I opened my eyes. My assistant, Clara, was standing there, looking concerned. The board is waiting for your vote on the merger. I'm coming, I said. My voice was dead. I just had to dispose of something. I went back into the meeting and voted to acquire a competitor. It was easy. Business was easy. People were the problem. Later that evening, I sat in the dark of the study, listening to the audio feed. They were in the garden. I could hear the rustle of leaves, the distant honking of taxis on Hudson Street, and the heavy, synchronized breathing of two people who were standing very close together. I knew it, Vanessa said softly. I knew you were the one. How could you know about this place? Nobody knows about this place. We are connected, Julian murmured. We are the same frequency. I made a mistake, Elias, she said, her voice trembling. I married for safety. I married because I was afraid of the world. But with you, I'm not afraid. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I want to be with you. Not just like this. Not just stolen moments. I want to wake up with you. Then leave him. I can't. Not yet. The money, it's complicated. Forget the money, Julian said. We don't need his money. I have my designs. I have my hands. We can build something real. You don't understand, she argued, but it was a weak argument. I have a lifestyle to maintain. But, maybe there is a way. Maybe sooner than I planned. What do you mean? Ethan wants a child, she said. If I give him one, the settlement changes. I can secure my future and then be with you. Would you wait for me? A year? 2? There was a silence. I gripped the armrests of my chair. This was the danger zone. If Julian agreed to wait, the plan would fail. I needed immediate action. I needed a scandal, not a long-term affair. I grabbed my phone and typed a message to Julian. Press her. Now. Ultimatum. I heard a ping on Julian's watch. No, Julian said abruptly. What? Vanessa sounded shocked. I won't be a secret for 2 years, Vanessa. I won't be the man waiting in the shadows while you play house with another man. While you have his child? The thought makes me sick. Elias, please. No. I have an offer, Julian improvised, following the script I had outlined for this contingency. A firm in Barcelona wants me to lead a restoration project. They want me to leave next week. If I go, I don't come back. I start over. Barcelona? Her voice cracked. Come with me, he said. Leave the money. Leave the safety. Come with me and live a life that actually means something. Or go back to your husband and your hollow house and forget we ever met. I can't just leave. Then this is goodbye, Julian said. I heard footsteps crunching on gravel. He was walking away. It was a brilliant performance. The walk away was the most powerful negotiation tactic in existence, and he was executing it perfectly. Wait, she cried out. The footsteps stopped. Don't go, she sobbed. Please don't go. I can't lose you. I feel like I'm drowning when I'm not with you. Then prove it, Julian said. His voice was hard, demanding. Stop talking about contracts and settlements. Prove that you choose me. Not in 2 years. Now. How? There is the summer gala on Saturday, Julian said. I found an invitation. You're going? But Ethan will be there. Exactly. Meet me there. Dance with me. Kiss me. In front of him. In front of everyone. Show me that you are not afraid of him anymore. Burn the bridge, Vanessa. If you burn the bridge, I will carry you across the ashes. It was a line I had stolen from a bad romance novel, but it landed with the force of a revelation. Saturday, she whispered. Okay. Saturday. I will be waiting, Julian said. If you don't kiss me, I leave for the airport that night. I'll do it, she promised. I'll choose you. The connection went silent as they presumably embraced. I took off the headset and stared at the dark screen. It was done. The stage was set. I should have felt triumphant. I had maneuvered her into a corner where she would voluntarily blow up her own life. I had outsmarted the woman who thought she was the smartest person in the room. But as I sat there in the silence of my empty house, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a man who had just paid an arsonist to burn down his own home, just to prove the fire insurance was valid. I poured myself a glass of scotch, neat. The liquid burned on the way down, a welcome distraction from the cold knot in my stomach. Vanessa came home an hour later. I heard the front door open and close. I heard her humming as she walked up the stairs. She didn't come to say goodnight. She went straight to the bedroom. I walked up quietly and stood outside the door. She was on the phone, likely with Jessica. I'm going to do it, Jess, she was saying. I'm going to leave him. For real this time. Not for the money. For love. It feels electric. It feels like destiny. He knew about the garden, Jess. He knew. I walked away, retreating to the guest room. She called it destiny. She called it electricity. She didn't know that electricity was a utility, and like any utility, it could be bought, metered, and shut off by the man who paid the bill. Saturday was coming. And with it, the end of the world as she knew it. I laid in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Elias Thorne was a better man than me. After all, he was the one she loved. And the tragic irony was that Elias Thorne was just me, stripped of my caution, speaking the words I was too proud to say, through the mouth of a stranger I owned. I had created the perfect husband to destroy my wife. And in doing so, I had realized that the man she wanted wasn't impossible to find. He was just impossible for me to be. The realization didn't change the plan. It just made the cold calculation a little colder. Saturday. The gala. The kiss. The end. I closed my eyes and waited for the nightmares to start. They were the only things I couldn't control anymore. Saturday arrived not with a bang, but with a suffocating, humid silence. The air in our house was thick, heavy with things unsaid and secrets packed into invisible suitcases. I woke up before dawn, as I usually did, but this time I didn't get out of bed immediately. I lay there, listening to the rhythm of Vanessa's breathing beside me. It was steady, peaceful, the sleep of the innocent, or the sleep of someone who has finally made a decision and found peace in the resolution. She was leaving me. Today. In her mind, this evening was the gateway to her new life with Elias Thorne, the architect of her dreams. In reality, it was the gateway to a desolate landscape of my own design. I watched the morning light creep across the ceiling, tracing the intricate crown molding that had cost more than my first car. Everything in this house was a testament to accumulation, to the careful stacking of assets. And tonight, I was going to liquidate the most volatile asset of all. Breakfast was a study in theatrical normalcy. Vanessa wore a silk robe, sipping her matcha tea with a distant look in her eyes. She was vibrating with nervous energy. Her hand shook slightly as she set the cup down. "Are you nervous about the gala?" I asked, buttering a piece of toast with deliberate slowness. She started, looking at me as if she had forgotten I was there. "What? Oh, no. Well, maybe a little. It's the biggest event of the season. Everyone will be there." "Everyone," I echoed. "It should be an interesting night. I have a feeling it will be memorable." "Yes," she whispered, a small, secret smile touching her lips. Memorable. She didn't know I was reading the subtext. She didn't know that every time her phone buzzed on the counter, I knew it was Julian, or rather, Elias, sending her reassurances, lines of poetry, and instructions for their rendezvous. I had written half of those texts myself in the command center the night before. "I have to go into the city for a few hours," I said, standing up. "Final check on the Asian merger. I'll meet you at the venue. Send the car for you at 6? "That's fine," she said, almost too quickly. She wanted me gone. She needed the space to prepare, to pack whatever mental baggage she was taking with her. "Don't work too hard, Ethan. Tonight is supposed to be a celebration." "Oh, I intend to celebrate," I said. I kissed her on the forehead. It felt cold. "You look beautiful, Vanessa. Even in the morning light." "Thank you," she said, but she didn't meet my eyes. She was already looking past me, toward a horizon I wasn't supposed to see. I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove not to the office, but to a small, nondescript studio in Brooklyn. This was where the final piece of the puzzle was waiting. Inside, sitting on a stool amidst a chaos of lenses and tripods, was a man named Miller. Miller was a photographer, but not the kind who shot weddings or portraits. He was a forensic photographer who had transitioned into private surveillance. He captured truth in high definition, usually the kind of truth people paid fortunes to keep hidden. "Mr. Collier," Miller said, nodding. He didn't offer a hand. He knew better. "I reviewed the venue schematics you sent. And? The lighting on the terrace is tricky. Low ambient light, mostly fairy lights and distant strobes from the main hall. If you want facial recognition quality, I need to be close. Within 20 feet. Can you do it without being seen?" "There are planter boxes with high hedges along the perimeter," Miller said, pointing to a blueprint spread out on a table. "I can set up here. I'll use a telephoto lens with a wide aperture. I won't need a flash if the exposure is right, but to be absolutely sure, to make it undeniable in court. I prefer a flash. It freezes the moment. No mochumbleur. No ambiguity." "Use the flash," I said. "I don't care if they see you. In fact, I want them to see you. But only after you have the shot. The flash is the signal." "Understood. One shot. Clear contact. Clear contact, I repeated. It has to be romantic. It has to look like a betrayal, not a misunderstanding. Wait for the kiss. Don't shoot the hug. Don't shoot the hand-holding. Wait for the lips. Miller looked at me with a professional indifference that I appreciated. He didn't judge. He just captured photons. I'll get the shot, Mr. Collier. Just make sure they are on that terrace at 9:30 p.m. The fireworks start at 9:45. You don't want the pyrotechnics ruining the exposure. 9:30, I confirmed. They will be there. I left the studio and spent the rest of the day in a state of suspended animation. I went to my club, sat in a leather chair, and drank sparkling water. I watched men around me discuss golf scores and mistresses with equal levity. I felt like an alien species. I was about to blow up my life, and the only emotion I could locate within myself was a grim determination to see the job done. It was the same feeling I had when I had to fire a redundant department, unpleasant, necessary, efficient. The gala was held at the Vanderbilt Estate, a sprawling Gothic Revival mansion on the north shore of Long Island. It was a place of old ghosts and new money. By the time my limousine pulled up the gravel driveway, the sun had set, and the house was ablaze with golden light. Expensive cars snaked in a line, Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, disgorging women in couture gowns and men in tuxedos who looked like penguins marching toward a precipice. I adjusted my bow tie in the rearview mirror. My face was a mask of polite disinterest. I checked my phone. One message from Julian, in position. She is here. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and walked into the lion's den. The ballroom was a sensory assault. The smell of expensive perfume, lilies, and roasted duck hung heavy in the air. A 10-piece orchestra was playing a waltz that sounded melancholic despite the tempo. I navigated the crowd, shaking hands, nodding, smiling with my mouth but keeping my eyes dead. Ethan, where's that gorgeous wife of yours? It was the senator, a man with a red face and a handshake that was too wet. She's around, Senator, I said smoothly. You know Vanessa. She likes to make an entrance. Or perhaps she is admiring the gardens. She has a newfound appreciation for nature. Good for her, good for her. Say, about that shipping regulation. I engaged in 5 minutes of meaningless conversation about tariffs, my eyes scanning the room. I saw Jessica, Vanessa's friend, holding court near the Champagne Tower. She looked nervous too. Vanessa must have told her. Jessica was the accomplice. She probably thought this was a great romantic adventure. And then, I saw her. Vanessa was standing near the French doors that led to the terrace. She was wearing a dress I had never seen before, a deep, blood-red silk that clung to her frame like a second skin. It was aggressive. It was bold. It was the dress of a woman who was done apologizing. She wasn't looking for me. She was scanning the crowd, her eyes darting frantically. She was looking for Elias. I didn't approach her. Not yet. I moved to the periphery, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing tray. I took a sip. It tasted like metal. From my vantage point in the shadows of a large marble pillar, I saw him enter. Julian Ross, or Elias Thorne, as he was tonight, looked magnificent. I had paid for the tuxedo, a bespoke midnight blue velvet piece that made him look like a rogue prince. He walked differently tonight. There was no hesitation in his stride. He moved with the confidence of a man who held all the cards. He had $50,000 of debt erased, and another 100,000 waiting in an escrow account, contingent on his performance tonight. He was acting for his life. He didn't stop to talk to anyone. He moved through the crowd like a shark through water, heading straight for Vanessa. I saw the moment she saw him. Her entire body posture changed. Her shoulders dropped, her head tilted, and a look of sheer, terrifying relief washed over her face. It was genuine. That was the tragedy of it. She really did love him. Or rather, she loved the reflection of herself she saw in his eyes. They didn't touch. Not in the ballroom. That was part of the script? The tension had to be unbearable. I checked my watch. 9:15 p.m. I saw Julian lean in and whisper something to her. Vanessa nodded, her eyes wide. She looked around, guilt flashing across her face for a split second, before she turned and slipped out through the French doors into the night. Julian waited 10 seconds, then followed. I finished my champagne, placed the glass on a pedestal next to a bust of Julius Caesar, and began my own approach. I didn't go through the same doors. I took the service route, slipping through the catering kitchen, past startled waiters carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres, and out a side door that led to the lower garden. I moved quietly through the hedges. The air outside was cooler, smelling of salt water and impending rain. I knew exactly where they would be. The West Terrace. It was secluded, overlooking the cliffs, blocked from the main party by a wall of high rhododendrons. Miller was there. I saw the faint glint of a lens in the bushes. I gave a microscopic nod in his direction, though I wasn't sure if he saw it. I positioned myself behind a stone column, close enough to hear, hidden enough to remain a ghost. Vanessa and Julian were standing by the stone balustrade. The ocean churned blackly below them. "You came," Vanessa said. Her voice was trembling. "I was afraid you wouldn't come. I was afraid you were already at the airport." "I told you," Julian said. His voice was deep, resonant. He was projecting slightly, ensuring the microphone on his lapel caught every syllable for my later review. "I am a man of my word. I am here to take you away. But only if you are ready to be taken." "I am ready, Elias. I can't stay here." I looked at him this morning, at Ethan, and I felt nothing. Just pity. It's like living with a stranger. I listened. The words didn't hurt anymore. They were just data points confirming the hypothesis. "Then show me," Julian said. "Don't just say it. The car is waiting at the front gate. My bags are packed. We can be in Barcelona by morning. We can have breakfast on Los Ramblas. But you have to choose. Right now. Him or me." "But the money." Vanessa hesitated. The greed was still there, fighting with the romance. "If we just wait, if I just get pregnant." "Stop." Julian snapped. It was a brilliant improv. "Do you hear yourself? You are talking about prostituting yourself to your husband for a settlement. Is that who you are, Vanessa? Is that the woman I fell in love with? Because if it is, I'm leaving alone." He turned away, gripping the stone railing. "No." Vanessa reached out and grabbed his arm. "No, Elias. That's not who I am. I'm scared. I've never been poor. I've never been without a safety net." "I am your safety net," Julian said, turning back to her. He took her hands. "I will build you a world where you don't need his money. Trust me." "Do you trust me?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I trust you." "Then kiss me," he commanded. "Kiss me like it's the last time you'll ever kiss anyone. Kiss me and seal the pact. Once you do, there is no going back." The moment hung in the air, suspended like a water drop before the fall. The music from the ballroom drifted out, a slow, mournful cello. Vanessa looked up at him. I could see her profile in the moonlight. She looked beautiful and tragic and incredibly foolish. She was about to trade a kingdom for a mirage. She leaned in. She didn't hesitate this time. She threw her arms around his neck, pulling him down to her. It wasn't a tentative peck. It was a kiss of surrender. A kiss of possession. She pressed her body against his, abandoning all propriety, abandoning the contract, abandoning me. Click whir flash. The burst of light was blinding in the darkness. It lit up the terrace like a lightning strike, freezing them in a monochrome tableau of betrayal. Vanessa screamed. She pulled back, shielding her eyes, disoriented. "What was that?" she gasped. "What?" Julian didn't move. He didn't look surprised. He stepped back calmly, smoothing the lapels of his velvet jacket. He looked at the bushes where the flash had come from, then he looked toward the column where I was standing. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked slowly across the flagstones. The sound of my shoes was rhythmic, deliberate. Click, click, click. Vanessa saw me. Her face went pale, draining of blood so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked from me to Julian, and then back to me. "Ethan?" She choked out. "Ethan, I didn't look at her. I looked at Julian." "Did you get it?" I asked, my voice calm, conversational. "I got it," Miller's voice called out from the bushes. Perfect clarity. Faces visible. Intimacy confirmed. "Good," I said. "Send the files to my lawyer immediately. And back up the cloud server." Vanessa stumbled back, gripping the balustrade for support. "Lawyer? Ethan, what is happening? Why is there a photographer? Elias, tell him." She turned to her lover, her savior, her architect. "Elias, do something." Julian looked at her. The warmth was gone from his eyes. The adoration, the longing, the poetic soul, it all evaporated like mist in the morning sun. What remained was Julian Ross, the actor who had just wrapped a difficult scene. "My name isn't Elias, Vanessa," he said. His voice was different now. Lighter. Less textured. It was his real voice. "What?" She shook her head, unable to process the data. "And I'm not an architect," he continued, glancing at me for approval to proceed. I nodded. "I'm an actor. Unemployed, mostly. Until your husband hired me." "Hired you?" The words came out as a squeak. "Project Narcissus," I said. I finally looked at her. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I spoke with the soft, disappointed tone of a parent addressing a child who had broken a valuable vase. That was the operational name. "I heard you, Vanessa. In le Bernardin. I heard your plan. The 2 years. The baby. The divorce. The settlement. Her eyes widened in horror. You were there? I was behind the screen, I said. I heard you call me boring. I heard you call me a bridge. I heard you calculate the value of my sperm and the timing of your exit. It was very educational. Ethan, please, I was just venting, I didn't mean. You meant every word, I cut her off. And I consulted the prenup. Clause 4. 2. Infidelity. It was the only way to stop you from robbing me blind. But you don't cheat, Vanessa. You are too careful. So I had to create a temptation you couldn't resist. I gestured to Julian. Meet Julian Ross. I bought his debt. I wrote his script. Every book he quoted, every flower he bought you, every speech about soulless cities and glass cathedrals, I wrote it. I gave him the lines because I knew exactly what you wanted to hear. You didn't fall in love with him, Vanessa. You fell in love with a character I created based on your own complaints about me. She looked at Julian, her eyes pleading for a denial. Tell me he's lying. Please, Elias. Tell me he's lying. Julian sighed. He actually looked a little pitying now. I'm sorry, Vanessa. The debt was 50,000. I didn't have a choice. He owns me. You kissed me, she whispered. You said we were the same frequency. It was in the script, Julian said, shrugging. I'm a method actor. I had to sell it. Vanessa made a sound, a low, guttural keen of humiliation that was painful to hear. She looked down at her red dress, the dress of a woman who was leaving, and realized she had nowhere to go. The photo, I said, pointing to the darkness where Miller had packed up. That is proof of extramarital romantic entanglement. It voids the alimony. It voids the asset split. You leave with what you came with. Which, if I remember correctly, is a liberal arts degree and a very extensive shoe collection. You can't do this, she hissed, her shock turning into venom. This is entrapment. This is fraud. It's theater, I corrected. And you were the star. No judge will care about the setup, Vanessa. They will care about the kiss. They will care that you were planning to run away to Barcelona with a lover while your husband was working to support you. We have the texts. We have the recordings. Julian wore a wire. She recoiled as if slapped. She looked at Julian's lapel pin. Everything? She whispered. Every word, I said. Including the part where you called me a walking wallet last week. The fireworks began. The first rocket whistled into the sky and exploded in a shower of gold and green, illuminating the three of us in harsh, strobe light bursts. The crowd inside the ballroom cheered. They were celebrating the spectacle, unaware of the real drama unfolding on the terrace. I'm done, I said. I felt suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a hollow ache. The car out front isn't taking you to the airport. It's taking you to your sister's apartment in Queens. Your bags are already there. I had the staff pack them this afternoon. My sister? Vanessa looked horrified. She lives in a one-bedroom walk-up. Then you'll be cozy, I said. I'll see you in court. Or rather, my lawyers will see your lawyers. If you can afford any. I turned to leave. I didn't want to look at her anymore. She was broken, yes, but she was the one who had sharpened the knife first. I had just turned it around. Ethan. She screamed after me. You didn't have to do this. You could have just divorced me. I stopped. I didn't turn around. No, I said to the cold air. I couldn't. You wanted to take my future. You wanted to use my child as a weapon. I simply removed the ammunition. I walked back toward the French doors. Mr. Collier? Julian spoke up. He hadn't moved. The money will be in your account in the morning, I said without looking back. Good performance, Julian. But do me a favor. Lose the velvet jacket. It doesn't suit you. I walked back into the ballroom. The music was loud, a crescendo of violins. People were laughing, drinking, dancing. The senator waved at me. Jessica was looking around, wondering where Vanessa was. I grabbed a fresh glass of champagne. My hands were steady. My heart was beating slowly, rhythmically. I was alone in a room full of people, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel the weight of a lie pressing down on my chest. I walked to the center of the room, raised my glass to no one in particular, and drank. The champagne was cold, crisp, and tasted, finally, like victory. But as I swallowed, I couldn't help but notice the bitter aftertaste. It was the taste of scorched earth. The setup was complete. The trap had sprung. Now, there was nothing left but the paperwork and the silence of an empty house. The Monday morning after the gala did not bring the sun, it brought a gray, relentless drizzle that washed over Manhattan, turning the city into a watercolor painting of steel and sorrow. I sat in the back of my car, watching the raindrops race each other down the windowpane. I felt strangely weightless. It was the sensation of a captain who had navigated a ship through a hurricane and had finally reached the calm, dead waters of the eye, knowing the ship was battered but the cargo was safe. My lawyer, Marcus, had set the meeting for 10 a.m. He had chosen the large conference room on the 42nd floor, the one with the view of the Statue of Liberty, a subtle, ironic touch that I appreciated. Liberty, after all, was expensive. I arrived at 9:45. Marcus was already there, arranging files with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an amputation. "She's here," Marcus said, not looking up from his papers. "She's in the waiting room." She brought a lawyer. Someone from a strip mall firm in Queens. It seems her usual contacts at the high-end firms had a sudden conflict of interest when they heard who the opposing party was. "Good," I said, taking my seat at the head of the long mahogany table. "Let them in." When the heavy oak doors opened, Vanessa walked in. It had only been 36 hours since the terrace, since the flash of the camera, but she looked like she had aged 5 years. She was wearing a simple gray suit, one I didn't recognize, probably something old she had dug out of storage or borrowed from her sister. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, stripped of the volume and shine that usually defined her silhouette. She wasn't wearing makeup. It was a calculated move, I realized. She was playing the role of the victim now. The downtrodden, bullied wife facing the corporate monolith. She didn't look at me. She sat down opposite me, keeping her eyes fixed on the polished surface of the table. Her lawyer, a nervous man with an ill-fitting suit and a briefcase that looked like it was made of vinyl, sat beside her. He cleared his throat. "My client," he began, his voice cracking slightly, "wishes to resolve this matter amicably. We believe that the events of Saturday night were misinterpreted. We believe there is room for negotiation regarding the prenuptial agreement." Marcus didn't even blink. He simply pressed a button on the console in front of him. A large screen on the wall flickered to life. The image was crystal clear. High definition. High contrast. It was the kiss. Vanessa flinched as if she had been physically struck. She looked away, squeezing her eyes shut, but the image remained, a frozen moment of passion and betrayal, projected 5 feet tall. "Exhibit A," Marcus said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Photographic evidence of romantic entanglement with a third party. Taken at 9:42 p.m. on Saturday, August 12th. That proves nothing," her lawyer stammered, though he looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "A kiss, a momentary lapse in judgment, under the influence of alcohol, surely this does not constitute a relationship as defined by the statute." Marcus pressed another button. The screen went dark, and the speakers in the ceiling crackled. "I can't stay here. I looked at him this morning, at Ethan, and I felt nothing. Just pity. It's like living with a stranger." Vanessa's voice filled the room. It was ghost-like, echoing from the corners. "I am your safety net. I will build you a world where you don't need his money. Yes, I trust you. Then kiss me. Kiss me and seal the pact." The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavier than lead. "Exhibit B," Marcus continued. "Audio recording of the conversation immediately preceding the act. The defendant clearly expresses intent to abandon the marriage, intent to cohabit with the third party, and emotional detachment from the plaintiff. This was not a lapse, counselor. This was a plan." Vanessa's lawyer closed his folder. He knew it was over. He looked at Vanessa with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Mrs. Collier, you didn't tell me there were tapes. He trapped me." Vanessa finally spoke, her voice shrill, bordering on hysterical. She looked at me then, her eyes burning with hatred. "You set this whole thing up, Ethan. You hired him. You can't use this. It's entrapment. It's fraud." I leaned forward, clasping my hands on the table. "Fraud," I said quietly, "is obtaining value through deception. What value did I obtain, Vanessa? I am simply protecting what was already mine. You were the one who planned to defraud me. You were the one who planned to use a child, a non-existent child, to circumvent a contract you signed with your eyes wide open. You manipulated me," she cried, tears streaming down her face now. "You played with my mind. You sent that man to make me fall in love with him." "I sent a mirror," I corrected her. "I sent a reflection of your own vanity. If you had been a loyal wife, if you had been the person you pretended to be, Julian Ross would have been nothing but a stranger at a gallery. You would have walked away. But you didn't walk away. You engaged. You lied. You cheated." I signaled to Marcus. He slid a single document across the table. "This," Marcus said, "is the settlement agreement. It adheres strictly to the infidelity clause of your prenuptial agreement. You receive no alimony. You receive no share of the real estate. You receive no share of the investment portfolio. You retain your personal effects, your clothing, and the vehicle registered in your name, the 2019 sedan, not the company car. Vanessa stared at the paper. I have nothing, she whispered. I have no job. I have nowhere to live. You're leaving me destitute. You have your freedom, I said. That's what you wanted, isn't it? You told your friends in Le Bernardin that you wanted to be young, rich, and free. Well, 1 out of 3 isn't bad. She looked up at me, searching for a trace of the man who had once brought her coffee in bed, the man who had bought her the house in Greenwich. But that man wasn't in the room. That man had died in the restaurant behind the ivy screen. I need time, she said. I can't sign this now. You sign it now, I said, my voice hardening. Or we go to court. And if we go to court, Vanessa, I will release the full audio tapes to the public record. I will let the world hear how you spoke about your friends. I will let them hear how you plan to use a baby as a financial lever. You will be a pariah in this city. You will never be invited to a gala again. You will never chair a committee. You will be radioactive. It was the threat of social death that broke her. Poverty she could perhaps rationalize, but irrelevance? That was her true nightmare. She picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold it. She signed her name. It was a jagged, ugly scrawl, nothing like the elegant signature she used to practice. Done, Marcus said, snatching the paper away before she could change her mind. The divorce decree will be filed within the hour. You are no longer Mrs. Collier. Vanessa stood up. She looked small. The gray suit swallowed her. She looked at me one last time. You win, Ethan, she said softly. But you're alone. You're sitting at the head of a long table, and there's no one else here. You think this is victory? This is just math. Math doesn't lie, I replied. Goodbye, Vanessa. She turned and walked out. The door clicked shut. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chair. Marcus gathered his papers, sensing that I needed a moment. Excellent work, Ethan, he said quietly. Clean. Efficient. Yes, I said. Efficient. 3 days later, I had one final debt to settle. I arranged to meet Julian Ross at a diner in Hell's Kitchen. It was a neutral ground, far from my world of glass towers, and far from the glamorous circles he had briefly inhabited as Elias Thorne. He was sitting in a booth near the back, nursing a black coffee. He looked different. The bespoke velvet tuxedo was gone, replaced by a denim jacket and a t-shirt. But the change was deeper than clothes. The desperation was gone from his eyes, replaced by a wary, guarded look. He looked like a man who had won the lottery but lost his wallet on the way to the bank. I slid into the booth opposite him. I placed a cashier's check on the table. $100,000. Payment in full, I said. Plus a bonus for the improv on the terrace. The Barcelona line was inspired. Julian looked at the check, then covered it with his hand, sliding it toward him. He didn't smile. Thanks, he said. His voice was flat. You don't look happy, Julian. You're debt-free. You have capital. You can start over. You can go to LA, try for pilot season. You can do whatever you want. He stirred his coffee, watching the black liquid swirl. Yeah, I guess. What's the problem? The morality of it? I asked, genuinely curious. Don't tell me you developed a conscience in the last 72 hours. It's not that, Julian said. He looked up at me. It's just, she really loved him, you know. She loved who? Elias, Julian said. She didn't love me. She didn't know me. But she loved Elias Thorne. The guy I was playing. When we were in that garden, when we were talking about art and silence, she wasn't faking it. She was opening up. She was vulnerable. She was vulnerable to a lie, I reminded him. She was falling for a reflection. Maybe, Julian shrugged. But for a few weeks, she was happy. I saw it in her face. She was happier with the fake me than she ever was with the real you. The words landed like a dart. It was a precise, painful strike. That's because the fake you was designed to be perfect, I said, my voice cold. Real people aren't perfect. Real people have flaws. Real people work late. Real people are boring sometimes. She wanted a fantasy. I just gave her one. You gave her a fantasy so you could kill it, Julian said. That's dark, man. Even for a method actor, that's dark. It was necessary. Was it? Julian pocketed the check. He stood up. You know, when she screamed on the terrace, when she realized who I was, she didn't look at me with anger. She looked at me with grief. Like I had died. In a way, I guess Elias did die that night. Elias never existed, I said. He existed to her, Julian said. And I think I like being him more than I like being me. Elias was a better man. He had a soul. I'm just the guy who took a check to break a woman's heart. He threw a $5 bill on the table for his coffee. Good luck, Mr. Collier. I hope the money keeps you warm. Because I have a feeling it's going to get very cold in that big house of yours. He walked out of the diner, merging into the lunchtime crowd. I watched him go. I touched the spot on the table where the check had been. It was just a transaction. A service rendered. A problem solved. Why did I feel like I had just lost something I couldn't quantify? The house in Greenwich was silent. The staff had been dismissed for the weekend. I walked through the rooms, the echo of my footsteps the only sound. The closets in the master bedroom were empty. Vanessa's clothes, her shoes, her endless collection of bags, all gone. The room looked larger, sterile, like a hotel suite waiting for the next guest. I went to the study. I sat at my desk, the command center now dismantled. The monitors were off. The tracking software was deleted. The game was over. I poured myself a scotch. I sat in the semi-darkness, watching the dust motes dance in a shaft of afternoon light. The doorbell rang. It was a jarring sound. I wasn't expecting anyone. I ignored it, thinking it was a delivery, but it rang again. Long, insistent. I stood up, glass in hand, and walked to the foyer. I opened the heavy oak door. Vanessa was standing there. She wasn't wearing the gray suit from the lawyer's office. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, looking disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed. She had been crying, but there was a strange, frantic energy about her. Vanessa, I said. I didn't step back to let her in. You shouldn't be here. The settlement forbids you from entering the property. I know, she said, her voice trembling. I know, Ethan. I had to ask you something. I had to know. Know what? Why did you do it? We went over this, I said, weary. The money. The prenup. Clause 4. 2. No, she shook her head violently. No, that's not it. You could have just divorced me. You could have fought me in court for years. You have the money for that. But you didn't. You created a play. You hired an actor. You wrote a script. You spent weeks watching me, listening to me, orchestrating every single moment. She took a step closer. Her eyes were searching mine, looking for something that would save her pride. You went to so much trouble, she whispered. The detail, the flowers I like, the books, the specific words. You knew everything about me. You knew my heart better than I knew it myself. I knew your profile, I corrected. No, she insisted. You knew me. And you spent all that time, all that energy, just to keep me? Or just to punish me? A man doesn't do that for money, Ethan. A man does that because he feels something. Hate. Love? Obsession? It's the same fire. She was smiling now, a twisted, desperate smile. She was rewriting the narrative in her head. She couldn't accept that she was just a bad investment being liquidated. She needed to believe this was a crime of passion. She needed to believe she was important enough to warrant such an elaborate destruction. You still love me, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. In your own sick, twisted way, you love me. That's why you couldn't just let me go. That's why you had to be the one to break me. Because you couldn't stand the idea of me being happy with anyone else. She reached out, her hand hovering near my arm. Admit it, Ethan. This wasn't business. This was personal. This was us. I looked at her. I looked at the delusion in her eyes. It was her final defense mechanism. If she could convince herself that I was a tragic, obsessed lover, then she wasn't a fool who got played, she was the heroine of a dark romance. I took a sip of my scotch. I let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. Vanessa, I said softly. You are overthinking it. Am I? Yes. You see, I run a logistics company. My job is to move cargo from point A to point B with the minimum amount of friction and cost. You were cargo. You had become hazardous. And the cost of offloading you the traditional way, through a standard divorce, was projected to be 40% of my net worth plus 18 years of child support. I paused, watching the light fade from her eyes. The cost of Project Narcissus, I continued, my voice devoid of any cruelty, just simple fact, was $150,000, plus legal fees. That is a return on investment of over 10,000%. It wasn't obsession, Vanessa. And it certainly wasn't love. It was just budget management. She froze. The romantic narrative she had constructed crumbled into dust. She saw the truth then. She saw the absolute, terrifying emptiness of my calculation. She wasn't the heroine. She wasn't even the villain. She was just a line item in a spreadsheet that had been deleted. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a businessman, he replied. And I believe our business is concluded. I started to close the door. Ethan, she cried out, putting her hand on the wood. What are you going to do? You're going to be all alone in this mausoleum. You have nothing. I have my ships, I said. And I have my peace. Goodbye, Vanessa. I closed the door. I heard the lock click into place. A heavy, final sound. I waited. I heard her sobbing on the porch for a minute, maybe two. Then I heard her footsteps retreating down the driveway. Then the sound of a car engine starting and fading away into the distance. Silence returned to the house. I walked back to the study. I finished my scotch. I sat in the leather chair that Elias Thorne, or Julian, had sat in when he signed his contract. I was free. The threat was gone. My fortune was intact. My legacy was secure. No one would ever try to play me again. I had proven that I was the superior strategist. I looked out the window at the manicured lawn, the darkening sky, the vast, empty estate that was all mine. Julian was right, of course. It was cold in the house. The heating system was state-of-the-art, but it couldn't touch the chill that seemed to radiate from the walls themselves. I thought about the hidden garden. I thought about the text I had sent Julian with the coordinates. St. Luke's. Turn left at the broken gargoyle. I hadn't been to that garden in 5 years. I wondered if the mint still grew there. I wondered if the silence was still loud. I realized then that I could never go back there. I had weaponized my own nostalgia. I had burned the sanctuary to catch the thief. I stood up and walked to the window, watching my reflection in the dark glass. A man in a suit. Successful. Powerful. Alone. Scorched earth, I whispered to the reflection. It was an effective strategy. It ensured total victory. It ensured that the enemy could never grow again on your land. But the problem with scorched earth is that you still have to live on it. I turned away from the window and walked out of the room, turning off the lights one by one, until the entire house was swallowed by the dark. Epilogue, the ledger 6 months later. The gala season had started again. The invitations piled up on my desk, cream cardstock, gold embossing, requests for my presents and my checkbook. I declined them all. I worked. I expanded the fleet. I acquired a competitor in Rotterdam. The numbers went up. The graphs trended green. I saw Julian once. It was on a billboard in Times Square. He had landed a role in a new gritty crime drama. He looked tough, cynical. He looked a little bit like me. The review said he brought a haunting intensity to the role. I wondered if he was using the memory of the terrorist to fuel that performance. I wondered if I should ask for a royalty. I never saw Vanessa again. I heard rumors, of course. The circles I moved in were small. She was living in Queens, working as an assistant manager at a boutique. She was dating a man who owned a chain of car washes. Safe. Boring. Probably happy. Sometimes, late at night, when the city was asleep and the only sound was the hum of the server room cooling fans, I would open the safe. Not to look at the money, or the deeds. I would take out the blue folder. The prenup. I would turn to page 42. Clause 4. 2. I would run my finger over the text. Verified romantic entanglement. It was the masterpiece of my career. The perfect maneuver. But as I sat there, in the silence of the empire I had saved, I realized that clause 4. 2 had a secondary effect I hadn't calculated. A hidden cost that wasn't in the spreadsheet. By proving that love was a liability, I had insured myself against loss. But I had also insured myself against life. I closed the folder. I locked the safe. I went back to work. After all, the ships were moving, the ocean was vast, and there was always another storm to navigate. And in the storm, at least, you don't have time to feel the cold.